On tonight's episode of Three Bro Sports Podcast, brought to you by Anchor FM. It's one of the biggest ones of 2019 as we go over the potential dynasty going on in Baltimore, the Ron Rivera firing, also the quarterback news in the NFL, and also Thursday night picks. But first,
shut up and sit down.
and welcome back to another Three Bro Sports episode. I'm Connor.
I'm Calvin.
I was never given a name.
All right, I guess you're just going to be no name for today. And this is the podcast, just three college students who go on about sports forever. And as I said in the intro, this is actually one of our most important episodes, as we started this as a podcasting class at our college. And we never knew each other. I'm from California. I just moved here. Brett and Calvin, they knew each other. I'm calling you Brett from now on. We're just going to go with that.
I don't know who that is.
That's the name for now.
Whatever makes you feel okay.
But we all started this with the idea of all three of us are really into sports. We could go on about it forever, and we could tell by the first day of class. And we've started this podcast just based on actually having a really good time doing so, and we're also planning on doing this once this class ends, which today, December 5th, is the last day that we're going to be students for that class. So we're going to keep on going throughout winter break, come around. We're going to figure things out for that. But
cast us out into the fire.
Oh, really?
Are you not wanting to do this anymore?
I was born ready.
Sure, Mr. No Name. Well, just keep saying that to yourself. But I just at least want to get that out the way, and I wanted to thank everybody for all the support so far. We already got over 175 views so far. Now, I know for a fact we don't have enough family members to send it to 175 times for them to listen. So there actually is real viewers out there, not that we're jamming it down their throats. So thank you so much for the support. We're going to keep on getting better coming into 2020.
Appreciate all 175 of you. 'Cause I'm going to pretend it's 175 individuals and not someone just like we have one crazed fan out there who's just like listening to us.
It's actually Connor just making a bunch of different accounts.
I've tried every single streaming platform that Anchor provides to us, but no, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I don't have the time for that as much as I'd want to up the views. But let's just go into the NFL world, as a lot of revelations have happened this week after the gobble-gobble matchups. Things first. Ron Rivera, head coach of the Carolina Panthers, finally got canned like spam. He's gone. He's out of there. Now, I like this firing due to the fact that he was the reason Cam Newton will never be the same anymore, of playing him too much last year, and you could tell he wasn't healthy any way, shape, or form on the field. There's a reason why they didn't even make the playoffs. I'm okay with this, but I don't know any head coaches that could do a better job that are available right now. What are you guys' thoughts on the Rivera firing?
I mean, I don't think it was a bad move just because I feel like Rivera hasn't really done that much since he's been there. A lot of people always go back to, he went to the Super Bowl in 2015. Okay, what other great years did he have? They made the playoffs in 2014 with a losing record, so I just never really saw what was so great about Ron Rivera. So I'm not against it, but I do see what you mean by who's out there. It's just kind of one of those things where you got to just take a gamble on it. Hopefully the guy works out.
Yeah, it's just time for them to move on, I think. Like you said, they did have that 1 year where they did make it to the Super Bowl, but that was pretty much riding on Cam Newton's MVP season where he played so well. Ron Rivera, to me, is one of those guys who the team probably really likes him as a coach.
Yeah, that was one thing a lot of players have said.
Carolina has always had a solid defense, so I think that's something that can be said for his coaching. He played in the NFL. I'm pretty sure he was a linebacker, so he has defensive background, and I'm sure that he'll have at least maybe not a head coach, but maybe a defensive coordinator somewhere, just to keep that going, because Carolina's defense has always been solid, and without Cam Newton this year, they haven't been the greatest, but that's not to say that he was playing that well either. So
yeah, he was injured the majority of the time, and I give you that. It's kind of like the same with Dan Quinn, the head coach for the Atlanta Falcons. Let's be real. Are we expecting Dan Quinn to get fired after this year? I'm saying yes.
I'm saying yes.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and he'd be a good defensive coordinator somewhere. I just don't think he's a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, when Atlanta went to the Super Bowl, they had Kyle Shanahan as the offensive
Oh, yeah.
coordinator, and that made
Now that
Dan
guy
Quinn
can be a head coach.
look like a great head coach because his offense was playing great, and he, like you said, he's a great defensive coach. So, but without that, he's really struggled since.
Yeah, and there's always an opportunity for head coaches to get in as an assistant. Like Todd Bowles, he was the coach for the Cardinals he was the head coach for the Jets. Then he became the defensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. If you're at least defensive minded, at least you're still going to have a chance to go somewhere else and be an assistant. It's not like you're out of the league for 3 years like it is in the NBA. It's if you get fired, odds are you're not coming back for a while.
But do you guys think that he would still be the coach of the Carolina Panthers if they had beaten the Redskins this weekend?
Yes, I
think
do.
so?
He would be still around as of right now, but I think it was the final straw of ownership was already upset that Newton has regressed so much that he was basically on his last straw. But that was a sad loss.
I mean, you got to give credit to the Redskins with Adrian Peterson
and Darius Geis coming back.
Geis, they both had over 100 yards. So.
Yeah, Darius Geis has been one of the most frustrating players in all football for one reason only. The dude can't stay healthy, and everybody drafts him in fantasy thinking that he's going to be a sleeper, and he produces the numbers when he's healthy. But people overdraft him thinking, oh, this is the year for him now. And it never turns out to be that way.
You get 4 games a year out of him.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem with it. But into that game, they were up. Carolina was up 14-3. Everything was looking perfect, and then Kyle Allen has single-handedly just said, I really don't care anymore. I'm done. And Calvin, you hit it right on the spot. We talked about this earlier about how Kyle Allen may not be the right guy. I didn't buy it yet until the record proved otherwise, but it's right on the money. So congrats. You've been on fire recently with the picks. We'll get into that a little later as somebody has dethroned the champion since the beginning of the show. I think you already know what I'm talking about.
I'm playing it safe in the back.
Brett's idea, slow and steady wins the race, and I agree with you on that.
I'm helping the audience by, they see my picks and then they pick the opposite of what I say. So that's probably helping somebody if they're doing it that way.
Yeah, and Thanksgiving was the toughest one of them all, especially that Cowboys game. I said last podcast, I'm fine if the Cowboys lose and I'm wrong, but it at least shows you where this organization is at. And the dysfunction going around with Jason Garrett not really knowing what he's doing, not holding guys accountable to what their lack of performance. This is one of the better teams in the NFL on paper. There's no way to run around from that fact. There isn't. But this team got totally outplayed by Buffalo, and Buffalo's got a lot of momentum going their way right now as they try to finish off the year.
Yeah, I think it'll probably live in infamy forever when you said the Bills were overrated. I think that if any Buffalo fans are listening to that, they're like,
I don't
that on repeat and then just like
my apologies to Bill Mafia.
Fist bumping.
But at the same time, I'm still going to stand with what I said. I'm not going to be somebody to flip flop around. I'll be wrong on it. I'm fine, but I'm not going to try to flip the page and be like, oh, I never said that. What are you talking about? They're the greatest team ever. And try to do that comparison videos, put them on YouTube and everything.
Dallas has struggled. They were struggling before they even played Buffalo. So I mean.
Yeah.
Let's just see what happens.
Yeah, and Buffalo still has to fit. To me, it's if they beat New England, then I'm gonna look at them being saying, okay, this team is completely legit. Or if they have another big matchup coming around, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but if they have one big matchup and they're able to pull that off, then I'd feel a lot more confident. They just haven't had that one win against a team where I look at it like, oh crap, okay, yeah, I need to be biting my dust.
They do play Baltimore this week.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way that they're winning that one. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that because they're not bad. They're not good. But the 49ers, we'll get into the Ravens in a little bit. There is almost no way of stopping that Ravens team. But we got a special guest coming in for you guys that'll talk a little bit more about the Ravens in a little bit. But let's just, speaking of the Ravens, Lamar Jackson's success, dude is feasting out there. Just get into the quarterback drama of the NFL right now because it's juicy. Nick Foles signed 4-year, $88 million with the Jaguars. He just got benched again for Gardner Minshew. Is Minshew Mania 2.0 coming back?
Part of me kind of hopes so because I really liked how the internet was with Minshew Mania. But
Yeah, London loved him.
oh yeah, everyone loved Gardner Minshew.
And my fantasy team was loving him when I had DJ Chark.
But I mean, at this point, I would think probably the main thing that concerns me is, okay, you did just give this guy a big contract, and now he's sitting on the bench. So what are you going to do with that? Is he going to be traded, or is he just going to be the most expensive backup quarterback ever?
I think Nick Foles is in kind of a weird situation as to where he got injured in the beginning of the season, and then Gardner Minshew came in and played so well. And I feel like you saw when he came in and replaced Nick Foles, the team just kind of rallied behind him, and they've had him for most of the season. Whereas Nick Foles was coming back off injury, he might have been dealing with that, and also the team had been used to playing with someone else. So, yeah, they had the big name, and that's probably the reason that he got put in there over Gardner Minshew. But like I said, you saw how the team rallied behind him, and they'll probably continue to go that way just because the team plays better with him behind center. That's just how it was. I mean, Nick Foles completed like half of his passes and threw one pick. I mean, it didn't look good. So,
Yeah, and the biggest thing is you spent $88 million on this guy. You can't when you bench him, it's tough to tell him what his future is with the team if you're going to make that big of a commitment, but you're still sticking with the rookie. So I think the question now turns to you guys. Is he going to return to Jacksonville next year? Is he going to remain there, or is he going to be shipped out?
You want to start with this, Brett?
my gut tells me he'll probably be there in the beginning of the season, but I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't start him and ended up trading him somewhere where another team probably needs a quarterback more, and they'll probably be willing to take on that contract to have Nick Foles on their team.
Yeah, because there's one big thing about that, of like kind of what you're saying is, let's just use Lamar Jackson and Robert Griffin III as an example. There's not too much of a big difference, as both are very mobile quarterbacks, and you could easily use one of those two as a receiver or a running back. I'm not saying that it's their primary position, like some people, like Booker McFarland, cough, but you could at least set him out wide and at least maybe run a couple routes and still keep him involved in the offense. But Minshew and Foles, it's not. They're pocket passers. They're not going to run. They're not going to do anything else. It's tough to keep those two around. So you're just left with, do you want to save $20 million and go with the young one and kind of take your gamble? Or
Well, I think the important question that you need to ask is, do you want a quarterback with a great mustache, or do you want Nick Foles?
the city of Philadelphia would tell you Nick Foles.
I think the people know the answer to that.
Oh, I know the answer to that because he did an amazing job with DJ Chark. I think that's one of the most undervalued things that Minshew did. DJ Chark was a top 10 receiver throughout most of this year.
I see you're starting him against me in fantasy this week.
Yeah.
We got playoffs.
Yeah.
Stakes are high.
You know, I got one problem with our fantasy league right now. I don't understand how I'm 6-7 and ranked 7th, but I still scored the most amount of points in the whole league.
I think it just depends on wins and losses, man.
It does.
Because I beat you.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, one of my losses was a tie to Calvin. And for some reason, Calvin got the win on this. No, you don't laugh at me at that. That is not funny. But now this week, I have to face Brett, who's the number 1 team in the league.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same story for me in fantasy every year. I start out really hot. I think I went like 5-0 or 6-0, and then it's just I'm struggling. It's hard to win games now. I mean, we'll see what happens, but
yeah.
I don't feel too good.
It's starting off hot. It'd be a little different if you ended the year hot. But one team that's ending off the year on a hot streak right now is the Tennessee Titans. Ever since going with Ryan Tannehill midway through the Denver Bronco game, I think it was week 7, they're 5-1 right now. This team actually looks competent with Ryan Tannehill at center. Am I seeing something wrong, or is this a fluke?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a fluke in the regards of I've never really thought that Tannehill was that great to begin with. He's always been a pretty middle-of-the-pack kind of guy.
Yeah.
But Mariota at this point has just not made any progress since his rookie year.
Well, he doesn't want to throw the ball more than 5 yards. I think that's a problem.
So it's one of those things where Tannehill is better than Mariota, but is he necessarily the best guy for it? Probably not.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, I wouldn't I could see Tannehill's numbers not staying so consistent. I mean, he played well this past weekend, but Tennessee as a whole, they played really well, and I'm taking them to win the AFC South for sure because they just passed the Colts.
Whoa.
They blocked 2 field goals. You got to give credit to special teams. And, I'm not. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm remembering that the Texans are in that division.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So, yeah.
No, you got to stick to your guns.
That.
No, stick to your guns on
All
it.
right,
You
know
said
what?
it.
Titans all the way. I mean, I don't even think they can surpass Houston's record at this point.
You know what? They could be a wild card team. Like maybe they won't win a division.
They're going
but
to
they
play
can get
so
in.
well that they're going to take losses off of their record and add them to the win. They're going to be like, holy, these are playing so well, we're just going to give you wins back because we're so impressed.
They're going to take away the wins of, like, the Bengals and the Redskins.
That's how you backtrack, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a good way of doing so. But the last 3 games Tannehill has played, he already had his QB rating has been over 130 both times. And 2 weeks ago, it was 155.8 against the Jaguars.
I will say the Titans are for real. That's one thing I can say, and I'm not taking them to make any damage in the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're there.
Yeah,
That's all I'll say about that.
And just even looking at the numbers, 72% completion rating, 12 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Also, Derrick Henry has thrived in this environment, big time. The dude, 119 rushes, 724 yards, and 7 touchdowns so far. Like, this team has been superb. There's almost nothing you can fault them for on the offensive end as of right now. All right, we've been talking about Ryan Tannehill actually producing really well, 5-1. But we were talking about the Ravens a little bit. We wanted to save it, but now we have it for the perfect time, as we have basically the founder of the Three Bro Sports Podcast, Mr. White, in here, or as some people like to call him, the Professor. How you doing, Professor?
I'm fantastic. I don't know if I'm the founder of you guys getting together. That would be you guys as the founders, but I definitely, I guess, brought the situation, the opportunity. You made it. I gave you the opportunity, you ran with it.
I should really thank our parents, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm going to thank your parents right
creating
now,
us.
actually. Right now, thanking everyone's parents in the room.
My parents will say you're welcome. But you're a diehard Ravens fan,
Yes.
and none of us here are. All 3 of our teams lost this week. I'd like to thank the Ravens for giving my 49ers a loss. But going on to the Ravens, this team has been almost revolutionary of an offense no one has ever seen before. How do you feel as a fan seeing Lamar Jackson out there doing his thing?
I noticed this past week, I said to people I was watching the game with that I was having trouble following the ball, and I was watching, the confusion on the field. My eyes were deceiving me on where the ball was, so I knew the defenses were having just nightmares all season. They have tough running backs who have to be prepared to get hit because if Lamar has the ball, they usually think somebody else does. That's why they got a big back like Mark Ingram. Gus Edwards is also really sizable. They have to have guys in place that are tough and physical, and this is way different than your Tim Tebow Wildcat offense. This is a situation now where there's a lot of misdirection and fakes, and you also need wide receivers who are not selfish on this team. If you're a wide receiver on the Ravens, you have to be a team player. There's no diva situation because you're not going to barely sniff 500 yards probably in the season.
Yeah, in that game against the 49ers, the leading wide receiver was Willie Snead with 12 yards, and that was only because Jackson was having to scramble out, and he saw him for a first down. It was barely completed. But the RPO, that's the biggest thing they've been doing. So far, Lamar Jackson on the numbers. He has 70 rushing attempts for 570 yards, so that's over half of his rushing numbers this year. And he's second in NFL season single history. He's about to beat it with Michael Vick.
63 yards away.
Yeah, he's real close. And then he also has 133 passing attempts. It's almost 1,100 yards so far. It's 1,038. He's going up there. That's almost half of his passing yards this year. It's the RPO. Everything has been so revolutionary with this team.
Well, and it's a coordinator that you're familiar with as well.
Yeah.
Greg Roman, who, depending on which game and scenario you're talking about, is either not one of your favorite guys, I know.
No,
but,
I just miss him.
Yeah. But the situation now is with this team, they've got a quarterback that hasn't been seen since Michael Vick, and they have people in place in personnel to make this work. They have a really underrated tight end named Nick Boyle, and he's from Delaware. He went to University of Delaware, and he was a guy I thought they were going to cut a few years back because he kept getting popped for PEDs and things like that. He kept getting suspended. and they kept bringing him back. And I was thinking to myself, okay, why? What's the benefit? Well, he's a tremendous blocker. He's better at blocking than the 2 starting tight ends, Mark Andrews and Hunter Hurst, who was a first-round pick for the Ravens a few years back. He's better at blocking than those 2, and he kind of leads the charge. He's that extra lineman pretty much. They're also a team that uses a fullback when most people don't anymore. The fullback position is relatively dead. But Kyle Juszczyk, who's now a 49er, they really used him as a Swiss Army knife, and now they have this guy named Patrick Ricard who can be anything they need him to on that field as well. So the offense is definitely doing things that are pretty revolutionary, and maybe it's things that people have seen with run-pass option, but not in this capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree with it. I think you pretty much nailed it.
Yeah, the Ravens, like what you said about having receivers who aren't selfish, I think that can be really said for the whole team, because I know multiple times Mark Ingram on post-game interviews is talking about, if Lamar Jackson doesn't win MVP, it's rigged and all this stuff. The team is great, and everyone knows that, but they also, and they have the atmosphere where they can do something special, but the team chemistry is just really good as well. So, and that's something that can put teams that are good but don't have the chemistry, that can put them over the top if they play well together. So I think that's something that definitely shouldn't be understated.
Yeah, and just for Lamar Jackson in general, when you're looking at the numbers for him, he's not your stereotypical quarterback. He's only thrown for 300 yards once. That was week 1. He's only thrown for 250 yards twice, week 1 and week 5. He hasn't even thrown for over 225 yards for about 5 weeks straight. He's been sacked 3 times in 4 games. Not to mention, the dude doesn't even throw, but he's leading the NFL in passing touchdowns. The statistics are having issues trying to figure out who he is. They don't know what his main position is.
Well, I mean, you don't have to throw for 300 yards when you can run for 100 yards as well. Like I think this past weekend it was 100 passing yards, 100 rushing yards. It wasn't anything flashy throwing the ball, but you didn't really have to do anything because they got to the point where they're just running the ball and trying to manage the lead that they already had.
Yeah, and I had another question for the professor. Just because on this offense, the biggest thing that they're doing now is they're going for it on 4th down almost all the time. They're 15 for 20. They're best in the NFL on that. They're 2nd best on 3rd down conversions in the whole league, 5th best in red zone. They don't stop. When you think 4th and 3, they're still going to go for that. They don't care if they're on the opposite 30. What are you seeing out of this, and how has this actually been so successful for them?
Jim Harbaugh was one of the first NFL coaches to actually bring analytics into the locker room and the game plan, and he had these statisticians who basically said to him, here are your scenarios and here are the probabilities for converting that 4th down. And he found that 4th down conversion in a certain yardage situation is actually the way to go. So before, you had like Riverboat Ron, right? Ron Rivera, who just got fired. He was known as that gutsy guy who would go for it on 4th down. Well, John Harbaugh actually brought data and analytics into the locker room and figured out that that there are certain scenarios where the probability is very high for success. And like we said, with the team, right? If you have run pass option and it's 4th and 3, you're probably going to be able to figure out some way to get that 1st down, because teams are struggling just to figure out what you're going to do. And if it's only 3 yards, well, first of all, Mark Ingram's a guy who's built for, over 3 yards a carry. Gus Edwards, who's their complimentary back, he is actually at best when he's using that role, because he's the guy who pops off for 8-9 yards, to give Ingram a spell. Then, of course, you have Jackson, where they have to account for him at all times. So it's a mess for defenses to try and figure out exactly what's going to happen. So 4th and 3 is just a formality.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things that I think makes a team better, at least just going for it as often as they do. And that's honestly something that I've always felt that a lot of teams don't do, is that when you're in those short yard situations, like when most people play Madden, you don't punt in Madden. And for a lot of people that works. So it's just one of those things I've always thought, like, why wouldn't this work in the NFL, especially when you get the 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 3. Yeah, you might be at the 40-yard, like you're in 40, but at the same time, a punt's not going to do a whole lot of difference. Not to mention the fact that they do have all those dynamic runners and everything. It's kind of one of those things where you see 3 freight trains coming at you. You don't know which one is actually going to hit you, so you just kind of got to pick your poison with them and hope for the best.
I think the biggest thing for coaches not going in for it on fourth down, like you said, a lot of teams have success when they do it, but it's probably more the flack that they receive after calling 4th and 3 and then they don't make it. I mean, that's going to be talked about for a week. You're going to talk about why the coach called that play. It's all going to be on his shoulders. So naturally, I mean, there are people out there running these teams. They don't want to do that all the time. I mean, if you went for fourth down on every play that you had, I mean, who knows how that would work out for you, but they probably don't want to be fired the next day for making that call and then costing them the game.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan could be put into that category against the Ravens. 4th and 1, Mostert should have ran that ball. Instead, Garoppolo tries airing it out once again when he's had issues left and right. I know you're laughing at this, Professor, because that's the reason how y'all won.
Well, and what I was going to say, too, the difference is with Harbaugh. The difference is for him is he knows he's not on the hot seat. He knows that he has a situation now where he can actually do this because 2015, there was a situation where he had a team they had a losing record. Flacco was injured. Suggs was injured. The season was lost. Okay, and they had a situation where the team did not quit on him, and they had the Super Bowl hangover for a couple years before that. The team did not quit on him. So Harbaugh is a guy where he can make those decisions, and as long as they win, he's going to be just fine. And I think even if they don't win, he's going to be fine because I thought last year he'd be done for. I didn't think that he was coming back. There was rumors that he was going to actually turn in his resignation before drafting Lamar Jackson. So it's pretty wild to me that they have this situation going on. But he's safe, and that's the thing. He's as safe as any coach can be that doesn't have to worry about job security.
Yeah, I think it's also criminal that we haven't said Justin Tucker's name one time because
the GOAT
he won the
kickers.
If I'm not mistaken, he won the game for them this
Yes.
past weekend, so, and he continues to do that and continues to be the most accurate kicker in the NFL and breaking records. And so you got to shout out to Justin Tucker if you're listening. Good job.
And that Niners game was a heavyweight title fight.
It was.
Let's go ahead and just say that
yeah.
that could have gone any way, and
It
just
was one
happened.
hell of a game.
It just happened to go the Ravens' way. Couple plays here and there could have been either
And
team.
the 49ers, they missed a field goal. I mean,
Yeah, going into halftime.
3
Robbie
points
Gould.
cost you the game.
With a guy who hasn't played since what, week
Yeah.
1?
Yeah, and it was almost a 50-yard attempt
And he's
with the
50.
wind back against him. It wasn't a good one. And I know it got partially blocked, by the way, as well. That was one thing the video board reviewed. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the defense. Ever since Marcus Peters came in, they've only allowed 250 passing yards one time, and they haven't even allowed 20 points yet. Now, this defense has become the same defense that they were last year, years prior, before the offense is kicked into full gear, which is why this team is the team to beat. And it's not the Patriots right now. It's going to be the Ravens. They're the hot shot. The thing with the Chiefs of last year was they didn't have the defense. Well, this Ravens team has both. They're the heavy front. What can you elaborate on the defense so far?
Marcus Peters is the reason, because prior to getting that trade, their defense was starting to become a paper bag. They were starting to really fold, and if it wasn't for Lamar Jackson, the defense was going to be – Baltimore's been known for years for being the place for defense. They've had that track record, Ray Lewis, all these guys, Suggs. But the defense, before Marcus Peters showed up, was losing guys like Jimmy Smith, and they had to make that trade actually for depth. But here comes Marcus Peters and immediately becomes a pick-six guy, and he got the swagger back and that attitude and that punch you in the mouth. I can't say enough about Earl Thomas and what he's brought to the team. These guys, credit to the organization. They always replace guys when guys leave. They always know when to get rid of guys too. They know when that time has come, or maybe the hype train is a little too much based on the production. But if there was no Marcus Peters, I really don't think. I think there'd be a loss or two at this point, especially to the Niners. That game had the rain, the elements, but Peters is bringing that extra thing where now they're seeing that guys are getting pick sixes. Who wants that? No quarterback wants to do that. So guess what?
Yeah.
Now they're not throwing against Peters.
Yeah, Mr. White, we can just go on forever about this, but I do know you have a class to be teaching that us three are supposed to be in 4 minutes. So I'm going to let you off the hook a little bit early, but thank you so much for at least coming on to 3 Row Sports Podcast and not ripping my Sacramento Kings the first thing you do when you come on. So it was a pleasure to have you as the second guest of the podcast.
Listen, long-time listener, okay? First-time guest.
Original listener.
OG.
Yeah, first-time in-house guest.
That's right. Well, thank you guys for having me, and keep this up long after the class is over.
Oh, we will be.
Sure. We will be.
Make sure of that. And that was Mr. White for you guys. Really appreciated having him come on. And as I'm a 49ers fan, Brett's a Vikings fan, and Calvin's a Cardinals fan, we all wouldn't have that type of insight on the Ravens, which is really good because I believe that they will be a Super Bowl team.
Yeah, and I'm sure Calvin didn't want to talk about the Cardinals' performance this past week. So,
Man, that was a rough one to just sit there and watch. But
now, we have talked about the Ravens as a Super Bowl team. Now, it's time to get to a different bowl, as it's the Toilet Bowl matchup. Now, we got 2 this game. And the first one going off is the New York Jets going up against the Miami Dolphins. Now, it's the 2 butt fumbles running in together. One team has to win. What will be that one team?
taking the New York Jets all the way. Because, in all honesty, lately these 2 teams have been playing pretty similarly. Decent enough to get a couple wins, but still pretty bad. And I just feel like the Jets are a little bit better and a little bit more consistent in that regard. So I just have to give the edge to the Jets. They're also a little bit better on paper, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, I felt confident picking the Jets last week against Cincinnati, but I'm going to go the other way this week. Pick the Dolphins. I think I'm going to ride the Fitzmagic train. I think he played pretty well against the Eagles. Now the Eagles' secondary is terrible, and Eagles' defense as a whole is pretty terrible, but the Jets aren't really that good either. So I'm going to take the Dolphins in this one with Devontae Parker playing well, and that's my pick.
You're stealing it right from me, bro. I'm going to be going with the Dolphins as well. Fitzmagic had a really good game, 365 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 1 pick. Parker's had 90 receiving yards in his last 3 games, 90 or more. He's looked really good. He finally has a good weapon. Fitzpatrick had Godwin and Evans, which made him look so good, and now he has Parker, who's been not Mike Evans level, but he's been a great option so far this year. And I can't get a read on what the Jets are doing. They had a 3-game winning streak, but it's 2 steps forward, 8 steps back when you lose to a team like the Bengals, which me and Calvin did predict, and I do feel good about that. And normally I am the guy to go up against all the Jets. I always pick them in the toilet bowl matchups. I'm 2-0 doing so. But this week, I just don't see that happening. But since Miami has been in the conversation, their last win against Philadelphia has now entered Philadelphia in, wait for it, come on down, Philadelphia, as you are now a part of the Tank Bowl. Now, the Tank Bowl, or the toilet matchup of the week, as it'll be Monday night as the Eagles are going up against the New York Giants. The return of Eli Manning at the 116 record. It's either going to be above 500 or below. Which one will it be, fellas?
I'm going to say it's below because at this point, I don't think Eli Manning is going to make a huge difference for the Giants. He wasn't exactly that good to begin this year. Daniel Jones has been better, but not exactly the greatest. So even though Eli's a vet, I'd still have to take the Eagles to get a pretty solid win on this one.
I'm going to have to go the other way. I'm going to go with the Giants just to play devil's advocate. I'm going to say Eli is going to prove all his doubters wrong. He's not going to have a crazy, outlandish performance, but he's going to get the job done, manage the game, and against the Eagles' defense, I think they're going to get a win on Monday night. You know what,
Brett? We're going in this together, as I actually have I got the Giants getting this game as well. I think Eli Manning's going to come out there, and it's going to basically be all on the line. He wants to at least prove to everybody that, hey, look, there's an argument made. I'm a Hall of Famer. I'm showing you why I still may be a Hall of Famer. And this Philadelphia team, you don't know what to expect out of them. There's no expectation. This should be a must-win game. They should win. But when you lose to the Dolphins, you lose all your credibility for right now. It's just tough for me to get in by Philadelphia for it. I mean, Wentz has looked okay, but there's no receivers. The defense is nowhere. You don't know what you're going to get out of them.
Well, Eli's arm's got to be nice and rested up.
Yeah, he has to feel
Ready
pretty
to
good.
go.
And before we end it off, it's also for the Thursday night matchup, as it is the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Chicago Bears. All in favor for the Cowboys, say aye.
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 Aye, as well.
Okay, yeah. I don't even want to give Chicago the day of light based on how they've been playing. They had a good game against Detroit. I'll at least give them that.
Do you think Dallas will play better after Jerry Jones kind of
After
talking about his team on the media?
After Michael Bennett, he was the one who was screaming in the locker room of, it's not going to matter how much money you make. It's about they're going to remember you based on how being a champion or not. That's the big thing that a lot of Cowboys players haven't been acting at. Prescott has done a great job. Zeke's been fine, but the rest of the team, they're all in the mindset of, I want to make this big money. If the star players are going to hold out for this big truckload of cash, then I'm going to do that as well. But they're not playing that way. That's not how team football should be. The famous quote that I like to go with is, there's no I in team, but there's an us in victorious.
The Nickelodeon show is what that's from.
Why was I thinking the exact same thing? Oh, my God.
That's a good one, No Name. Thank you for that. All right, and that's going to wrap it up for today's podcast. I just want to once again say thank you for all the continued support that we've been receiving throughout this podcast. We're going state to state across the country. It feels really weird that we could pull this stuff up on Anchor, sponsoring this podcast, and see we have new viewers in new states popping up all the time. The views just keep going up, and we're very grateful for that, as we didn't think we'd have this type of following so early. So that's going to wrap things up for today. I'm Connor.
I'm Calvin.
I'm Brett.
Nice little puberty crack. I just want to point that out.
I was hoping no one noticed that.
No, I'm sorry. I had to notice that. But thank you guys once again, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one. Three Bro Sports would like to thank Anchor FM for sponsoring this podcast, and Benjamin Tissot on bensound.com for the amazing intro, outro music.